Insecurity in parts of Nigeria, as well as flooding, remain key drivers to the deteriorating humanitarian crisis situation in the country for over a decade now. The situation is so dire, especially in northern Nigeria, forcing an estimated 8.3 million people into conditions that need urgent assistance. That's according to the United Nations report for the month of March 2023. The report further states that over 80% of the population needing humanitarian assistance are women and children, while projecting an estimated 4.4 million others that might be facing hunger by mid-2024. In other parts of the country, flooding, kidnappings and secession agitations have plunged many into conditions needing urgent humanitarian assistance. The federal and state governments have continued to respond to some of these humanitarian needs in various ways. In most cases, the victims of flooding are relocated and supplies of essential commodities and food distributed. The federal government has also continued to drive some existing policies aimed at ameliorating the sufferings of Nigerians. Some of those interventions include the distribution of 5 billion naira as palliatives to states in the month of August, the conditional cash transfer to a targeted 15 million poor and vulnerable Nigerians, and the NPower program, which targets unemployed Nigerians between the ages of 18 and 35.
So first, what we've been able to do today, we have flagged off officially the renewed hope grant for very poor and vulnerable in society. We've seen several businesses, petty traders, and we have supported them now. So we have given them support, transfers, grants to support their little businesses and expand on those businesses.
These efforts of government, however, appear to be undermined by rising inflation, largely driven by the high cost of petrol, owing to the removal of fuel subsidy. That removal of fuel subsidy and the resultant hike in the price of petrol pitched Nigerian workers against the government as protests rocked most parts of the country. In response, the federal government announced a 35,000 naira wage award for workers, even as some state governments gave a pay rise to their workers, provided buses, and others approved a staggered work schedule to cushion the effect of the hike in transportation costs.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. We reviewed the outgoing year and government's responses to labor agitations with the president of the Trade Union Congress, Mr. Festus Osifo.
For us, we would not say that those meetings have yielded nothing or they have also achieved 100%. So we could say that maybe we could give them about 40% mark. And for us, 40% mark is not a pass mark. So, like I would say, the labor-government relationship is a continuous one. It is not a sprint, but a marathon. So on our path, we will continuously press harder to see that government respect the full dictate of what is there in the MOU that was signed with government.
As the year 2023 winds down, many wish it will roll by with all its challenges, while they look forward to a new year with optimism for a prosperous 2024.
Nigeria has been known as the giant of Africa, but what awaits the giant in 2024? Maybe a look back into 2023 could help in predicting its future, especially under a new administration, Bola Ahmed Tinubu's. The new president had the Niger coup fallout to deal with as the first international issue, setting the tone of being a hardline decisive leader when he announced ECOWAS would employ the use of force in returning the civilian rule of President Mohamed Bazoum. He was backed by the regional body, and during the weeks that followed, he would explain Nigeria had no intention of invading neighboring Niger, but that ECOWAS would prepare for a possible military intervention. The president went on to be Nigeria's #1 salesman when he began proposing Nigeria's readiness to welcome more international investors. He sought to reassure authorities of renewal of ties by resuming visa issuance from Dubai, the UAE. Nigerians make up the largest group of travelers to the UAE, and the government restoring visa issuance for Nigerians would balance economic and diplomatic relations between the two countries. President Tinubu returned from the meeting in Dubai, celebrating that an agreement had been reached, but the Dubai government only confirmed it was working through the fine print of the deal. President Tinubu continued his mission at the G20 meeting held in India. On the sidelines, he held meetings with U.S. President Joe Biden, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and World Bank President Ajay Banga, among others. Again, reiterating Nigeria was open to international investors. The same message was preached in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, during the first Saudi-Africa summit. There, he underscored Nigeria's commitment to attracting more foreign direct investment and expanding business partnerships, which are strongly reinforced by his administration's ongoing domestic economic reforms. He promised the bottlenecks had been removed and there would be huge return on investments.
The change is right here. Perception of Nigeria has been that of layback, corruption, and giant of Africa with elephantiasis. But that is gone. The realization of that hope is here. The belief is here. The change of the perception is right here. Forget the categorization of corruption. Forget it. It won't happen no more.
Convinced, the Saudi government established the Saudi Nigerian Business Council and assured the first meeting will hold in Nigeria. Not long after, President Tinubu joined other African heads of state and governments of the G20 Compact with Africa in Berlin, Germany. Speaking at the 10th German-Nigerian Business Forum, the president assured German businesses that with Nigeria's stable political landscape, foreign investments into the country are secure. The president's shuttle diplomacy for the year ended with his attendance of the COP28 climate summit in Dubai, where he witnessed the signing of an accelerated performance agreement between Nigeria and Germany to improve Nigeria's electricity supply.
The measures that were taken here, that we will, we've signed off on reduction of methane.
He also hosted a high-level meeting with stakeholders and investors on the Nigeria carbon market and the electric buses rollout program. The president also held bilateral talks with King Charles of England, the president of UAE, and leaders of several countries and multilateral partners to concretize engagements. Nigerians critical of the nation hopping are eager to see fruits of the president's trip, hoping that better positioning will translate into stronger foreign policy expressions.
In our last segment, we'll look at the humanitarian efforts of the federal government and their efforts to draw in contributions to the economy from the diaspora. We have joining us virtually, we have Ankyo Briggs, an environmentalist and human rights activist who joins us virtually. Okay, we'll get to hear her real soon. And then we have here in our Abuja studio, Abdulrahman Tarab, former member of the House of Representatives and director of this, Ms. Ankyo Briggs. Thank you for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy New Year.
Advance. Okay, here we have Abdulrahman Terab, former member of the House of Representatives and Director, Technology Transfer and Innovation at NITCOM. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Compliments of the season.
Thank you as well. So we've looked at two issues. We've played two reports, and this is before we come to Nigeria's relations with the rest of the world, where Honorable Terab, you come in. I want to go quickly to Madam Briggs, and this is to talk about the humanitarian, your assessment of the humanitarian efforts of the federal government. And we've talked about what had happened in 2023, and some would say still ongoing, but projecting into 2024, because when you look a little bit about some of the data that we have from Biscon Consulting Limited on social upheaval, it says there were so many protests and riots, the frequency, the whole of this year, 2023. It was characterized by widespread protests, civil disobedience, public discontent. It said civil actions were rooted in grievances that were related to inequality, injustice, and human rights violations, among others. So in projecting into 2024, do you think that it will be better in terms of the federal government's handling of its humanitarian efforts?
First of all, we must accept that the social insecurity and social upheaval and the fact that Nigeria really does not have so far, after so many years of independence, we do not have a social system that should do the job for humanity when it is needed. We don't have that system yet. That was very evident when the pandemic struck, and the World Bank actually did say then that only about 2% of people and that actually had access to the ad hoc social service system or structure that Nigeria was trying to put in place, and hence we now have the word palliative. Palliative is really a different word, and it's applicable in a different circumstances, and not really in the circumstances of helping people in times of disaster, in times of if you like, natural disaster, human disaster that we face purposefully through criminality, through the sort of upheaval you have just shown us with the pie graphs you've shown us. All these have started quite a long while back. And if we look to January till December now, I think since after the swearing in of this government, it has increased to the point where in just on Christmas Eve, we had all that killings and murders that went on, where we are referring to them as criminals and criminality. It is not. These are things that people have sat down and thought through and have executed on the heads of other human beings that are Nigerians. Now, that the fact that this federal government has come to inherit that is a huge problem for us, but that it will change without actually assuring or ensuring security in Nigeria. And no matter how much we project and hope and pray, if we're not able to cut this off and to really stop this invasion Indeed. That is coming into Nigeria from outside of Nigeria, we're really just fooling ourselves. And no matter how much the government wants to assure us with its promises and the figures and the hopes that it has, the reality is that these things don't seem as if they're going to stop anytime soon.
But Madam Briggs, just to jump in, I mean, perhaps these problems do have to stop because people are suffering. The number of IDPs are increasing. We have the federal government give out palliatives. You said palliatives are not sufficient. Some say they are perhaps short-term relief efforts that can, ameliorate the pain for the now. What do you suggest that they do? And this is for the relief efforts nationwide as we go into 2024.
Well, quite honestly, whether we like it or not, we have to have a system that first and foremost will not entertain or allow corruption. Corruption in every ramification, whether it is corruption in bringing in or in creating, manufacturing drugs that will actually kill people, whether they are dissidents or whether they are displaced peoples, and giving them good housing, good health care, and actually that people are receiving this help that they're supposed to receive. I mean, during just a little bit of personal experience during the war, I mean, we had relief coming into the then eastern part of Nigeria. And the sort of help we were getting were flown in from outside. And as far as they were coming in from outside, there were good quality drugs, they were good quality food, they were powdered food, they were not expired. And so now that we have so many decades of experience in Nigeria, I think that when our people are in trouble, we should already have a system that will respond immediately. That's why we have NEMA. And when you have NEMA, and what NEMA ends up doing with all the billions of naira is deliver zincs, is deliver mattresses, is deliver blankets, and they're not able to deliver food, they're not able to deliver quality health care and even education while those the people that are displaced are displaced. We have a very long way to go. We really have to set up a system that is going to learn from other countries and other bodies that have known what to do over decades, so that it actually becomes something that you go into, a mode you go into, immediately you sense problem, and not start running around like headless chickens that happens from these so-called organizations or parastatals in Nigeria, where quite honestly help don't get to the people until weeks or sometimes even months later, and where individuals and people are able to help more than even the government itself. Sadly, Nigeria does not yet have a welfare system. We should not allow the government to deceive us that there is a welfare system. There is no workable welfare system.
We would like to bring in our guest here, who is here in our Abuja studio, Honorable Tarab. And this is talking about Nigeria's relations with the rest of the world. When they say Nigeria outside, what do people think of?
Well, Nigeria has many faces. And you can look at it from various perspectives, even though this is not my area of core competence. But of course, Nigeria means a lot of things to a lot of people. Of course, a particular scenario is that of recent we've heard records of reports of having Nigerian people migrating into Nigeria, as well as having the Japa syndrome, people migrating out of Nigeria. So while some people see opportunities elsewhere, as well others see opportunities in Nigeria. And I think that depends on the side that you're looking at.
One question is, are we going to have Japa as well as much as we had in 2023, in 2024, do you think?
Well, we've always, seen Japa from two particular perspectives. There is always the push factor, and there is always the pull factor. I think what has actually exacerbated Japa in the last year specifically, or the last 2 years, is as a result of the outfall of COVID-19, which affected most of the developed countries, which actually had a lot of effect on their, care system that required them to kind of call to action requests for services across the world that will be able to support their system. That was the pull factor. And of course, it became, at a point in time, we've had reports where, as someone who is in the care industry, you don't even need to have a visa. The moment you get to the border, you'll be given visa and you'll be certified and be able to provide services in those locations. So these are the issues. And I believe what has actually exacerbated it much more than we've seen in the past is actually the current pull factor across the globe. And then we also need to understand that the global demography is also changing. Most countries are now having older populations. Most countries are now having need to require labor force from the rest of the world where such services are not that they are not provided, but of course maybe they are not well remunerated as it is in their places. So
is that also fueling that look at drawing contributions from the diaspora into the economy?
Well, you see, that's the other side of it for those of us in the diaspora commission and in the diaspora industry. Some people might look at the negative effect of it, and then we are also looking at some of the positive side of it. We've always tried to see the diaspora phenomenon as an investment and a development factor. Because up until now, most people look at it from a social perspective. I'm here, what do you call it, in the humanitarian session. Ordinarily, it's an economic issue. It's a development factor. And of course, we can now compare that to many other countries. I mean, history should be able to teach us that Israel developed from its diaspora. Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, developed from its diaspora. China developed from its diaspora. India is developing from its diaspora. So we need to now properly situate the human capital element of our development indices to see how we can get much benefit from that, take advantage of that. Because it's not all negative to some of us in the diaspora, in the diaspora area. We now look at it as there are some, what you may now be seeing as a completely negative effect has its own positive effect, even though it may take a while.
All right, our colleagues in Lagos have a couple of questions for you. Buki, Jeffrey?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Jeffrey, you were going to go first.
Yes, but don't go ahead.
Let me quickly follow up on that, Mr. Terab. You have rightly observed that the push and pull factors are a development issue. They're issues that have to do with the economy. But more importantly, do you see the deliberateness, the intentionality of the administration to address the push and pull factors such that, you know, we can stem the tide in the mass exodus of Nigerian professionals, which is beginning to affect a number of sectors now beyond the medical sector. And this is instructive because, you know, we cannot continue to rely on the remittances and the exchange programs. A number of our institutions, you know, are experiencing a dearth in the number of professionals. So do you see a commitment either in the programs of the administration or even in the budgetary commitments of the 2024 appropriation bill to stem the tide in the push and pull factors? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Terab, that's for you.
There is what we call the managed labor migration system. And right from the onset, we have always advocated for that. And interestingly, we have a labor migration policy 2014, which was approved by the Federal Executive Council at that time. And I believe that is the way to go. The issue is you cannot run away from the fact that, first of all, migration is a human right, is a fundamental human right. so long as migration is done legally and regularly. Now, the other issue is there is the need, latching on the National Labor Migration Policy, for us to now be deliberate about assessing our human capital, the need for us to assess and regulate the nation's human capital endowment generally. Now, that will mean there is the need for government to understand that there are areas that we require to be deliberate about ensuring that we maintain the necessary capital and human investments in these areas, while also trying as much as possible to provide for the, so to say, for the occupation of these areas, so long as it's going to be dynamic. What I'm trying to say here is that by 2050, it is projected that Nigeria will become 400 million in population. And whether we prepare for it or not, but there is the need for us to prepare for it, is that there are going to be global occupations. And there is the need for the country to prepare for these global occupations, so that we all know that the absorptive capacity in the country has its own issues. And there is no way we can be able to absorb the entire labor force that will be part of that 400 million in the next 30 years. So there is the need for us to start to prepare now. Now, the way to go, the government of the day, of course, heavily led by President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is actually looking at these core areas. You can see the issue of bringing in investments across the world, which we believe that by that is going to have effect on creating avenues for job creation. But what is even most important is the issue of remuneration, which the government has made efforts clearly and is making its statement that remunerations are going to be reviewed. And we believe that these are areas that such labor migration can be managed. But most importantly, the nation must be involved and must be deliberate about what labor is, what part of the labor it should use, and deliberately, determine the labor that it is going to export. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Terab, there's another aspect to the question of your commission, which has to do with the people. A lot of Nigerians have traveled out of the country. There's a report we're about to play now that will give you an insight of how many people have left or what is the driver of this particular Japa syndrome, as we call it. But of concern to me personally is the fact that this movement, sometimes we see some people in a very dire situation. Nigerians not as respected as they should be because of some of the things they've gone through. And even in African countries, here Nigerians are treated. So people that are remitting tens of billions of dollars in terms of all those remittances, the federal government has to do more in terms of protecting the image of these people, irrespective of how they went. I'm not saying supporting illegality as long as they are citizens. But let's take a listen or see this particular report and we'll come back to that question.
From passport offices to embassies and then international airports.
About to go through the security checks in the airport.
They are young, educated, skillful, but desperate to leave. A vast wave of emigration is sweeping through Nigeria. Visa applicants arrive here, one of the visa centers in Lagos. More applicants bearing envelopes troop in and out of several other foreign embassies and visa centers. Some contact their agents seeking shortcuts or faster ways of completing the process. but their patience is tested as they're made to wait for many hours and sometimes the whole day without success. For some, it's a journey that begins with hope but often ends in despair. Some Nigerians dispose of their properties in distress sale, and some also borrow monies to migrate in search of greener pastures. Others are promised jobs abroad that don't exist, and in the process, many are scammed. On the flip side, it's a beehive of activities as hawkers cash in on the situation to market their products. But let's put some numbers to this scenario. Some experts are concerned about the negative implications.
Nigeria is blessed when it comes to natural and human resources. We are blessed in both ways, and it's disturbing in the fact that the best are living in terms of medical doctors and nurses and engineers, and a lot is just leaving the country.
But it's a sentiment others disagree with.
The Jackman syndrome is a two-way street. What's the two-way? We tend to pay attention only to the outflux of people who are applying for school, applying for skilled hire, and relocating to other climes. Nobody is paying attention to how many people are actually returning to Nigeria. I mean, if you take a good statistics, which I would like to point out, a great number of the businesses in the private sector today that are either unicorns, startups, thriving businesses were set up by people who we classify as returnees.
Nigeria continues to lose medical experts to other countries, but as doctors continue to leave, shrinking the healthcare workforce drastically below the WHO's recommendation of 1 doctor to 1,000 patients. Dr. Jean Nassar, a Lebanese IVF specialist, has been practicing in the country since 2020. He wants the government to improve the quality of healthcare delivery in order to reduce the number of doctors leaving the country, as well as curb medical tourism.
All the health system here need to be more, if you want, taken care of. We need more good hospitals, good centers, and we need mostly the good doctors not to leave, and good nurses also. Good nurses and good doctors should not leave Nigeria, but for them not to leave, we should offer them maybe good centers and good hospital so they can still work here.
These analysts agree that the government must take this as a challenge and make living in the country so attractive so as to discourage the massive exodus of citizens.
One of the things we always advise governments to look at critically is the value that their bilateral relationships with other countries is producing for our citizens. I mean, the ease of doing business, quality of living, exchange programs, whether it's educational programs or business programs, access to exchange treaties. These things are very key to ensuring that one country can create an enabling environment, not only for our citizens, but to attract foreigners who consider that place a great place with ease of doing business.
I don't think Nigerians are asking the government for too much. I think if the government can prioritize energy in terms of power, infrastructure, and Nigerians just want to see a government that is ready to invest in the people, in trying to eradicate poverty.
So the expression on the faces of these visa applicants tell the story of desperation. They want to get out of the country by all means and all cost. And that's why some go through the Sahara Desert and others attempt to cross the Mediterranean Sea, thereby putting their lives in harm's way. But the big question perhaps is just how green is the pasture on the other side. From the Victoria Island area here in Lagos, Kelly Egiga, Channels Television News.
So, Mr. Terab, I'm sure you've seen that lovely report and all the perspective that's been shared.
Yes.
The question, naturally, is irrespective of the reason for moving, whether it's greener or not greener, my concern is about the protection of these citizens beyond, you know, just looking at remittances and all the beautiful things we could say come from abroad, from our citizens. Our citizens need to be protected. What is NITCOM and the rest of the federal government doing to ensure that whether people choose to leave the country in 2024 more or less, wherever they are not intimidated, they are not subjected to some level of hardship that we see and report sometimes?
Thank you very much. As you may have known, since the inception of NITCOM 3.5 years ago, or 4 years ago actually, the advocacy for the support of the importance of the dignity and the life of a Nigerian in a foreign country has very well been kind of upscaled, so much so that so many countries now take a serious concern when a Nigerian is involved in any incident that violates either their rights, their dignity, or affects their lives. We have, on a daily basis, been engaging with countries here locally in Nigeria, and as well as with them over there. We have situations where Nigerian lives were lost. I can tell you that the Commission, alongside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the embassies over there, are doing a lot to ensure that, one, redress is sought and achieved, and two, but most importantly, is that such nations come alive to start to appreciate that the life of the Nigerian matters. However, we also need to understand that at the moment, we are still in the beginning stages. Just like I said, there is the need for all of us as a nation to understand that the diaspora phenomena is an economic and development phenomenon. To that extent, we need to attach much more importance than just relating with our citizens, because we need to value them as a major source of our capital. And to that extent, we can be able to now attach the importance that it deserves to have. And this has been our advocacy across the board, from the establishment of the Commission to our dealings with the National Assembly and the federal government as well, for them to understand that there is the need for us to attach that. And while I'm telling you this, while I'm saying this, I can assure you that there has been marked response from both the federal government and the National Assembly in this regard. If you've seen the reports of the submission of the House Senate Committee on Diaspora and Intergovernmental Affairs a few days ago to the Appropriations Committee, they made mention of the fact that the diaspora phenomenon is so important, such that the country needs to fund it and ensure that our citizens are engaged more, not only on a responsive basis, but as well as reactive basis, but on a proactive basis. So I can assure you that this year there appears to be some progress, and we believe that in 2024 you are going to see marked progress. But also, let me please use this medium to commend the leadership of the current chairman, Honorable Abike Dabiri-Arewa, who ingeniously goes out of her way to ensure that she has personal touch with victims, and also ensure that she engages every sector of the system in addressing issues that deal with Nigerians who are violated in every
all right, Mr. Terab. Just as some people are resigning from the country and heading out of the country to go and pursue other interests, there are people who are also resigning right here in the country to maybe pursue other interests politically. One of the big resignations, and this is coming to the question will be posed to Ms. Briggs. We just got this information that the Edison here just wrote to the national chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Edison here, for those of you who are not familiar, I can see that letter there, resigning as Speaker of the State House of Assembly in Rivers State. It was one of the 4 during that division in the state, an imbroglio that we see still going on because we know the resolution and what it says. But it says, this is to formally notify you of my voluntary resignation as Speaker, member of the 10th Rivers State House of Assembly, representing our other East constituency, with effect from this date of this late letter. I wish to deeply appreciate my colleagues and the people of my constituency for the opportunity to continue and hope to continue to give my utmost best in the service of Rivers State subsequently. So Edison here has resigned from the Rivers State House of Assembly. Madam Ankyo Briggs, would like your response on this latest development in Rivers politics.
As I speak to you right now, based on everything surrounding what has so far transpired politically in my state, I can tell you without having too much information right now as I'm on air with you, is the honorable thing to do. I think that it takes greatness to be able for someone like Edison to be able to make that decision. There is an extent to which someone's arm could be twisted, and you would have to say, shall I let my hand break, or shall I move on while my hand has not been broken? I think that's where Edison finds himself. I wouldn't want to go too much into it because it's about my state, and I will get more information and probably even get to speak with Edison in the new year. But for right now, I would think, knowing the circumstances before now, I think it's an honorable thing that he did.
And we wonder if there'll be more resignations from the Rivers State Assembly in the new year, but we'll wait, and Trust Channels Television will be right here to bring you all of the breaking stories.